house. Well, the Fritz era started. I think that's what we can draw from that.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater coming to stop by, there might be a few of those tonight. Tell us, we appreciate you making us your first, or in this case, maybe last listen of the day. We just did Locked On Coogs postcast over in the Locked On Houston channel as well. So if you're traveling with us, thank you for making it over to this as well. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. Why hide it? Give us your reaction to the first Houston Cougar football game. Houston falls to UNLV 27-7 in their home opener to kick off the Willie Fritz era. We knew it was going to be a rebuild, and that it looks like it's going to be. I want to talk about a couple different things, including a look around the Big 12 and kind of what this fits, how this fits, should say, into the rest of the conference. I want to talk some about some things that I thought were actually positive on the defense side of the football. Can I say that yet? And then first, we got to talk about the hole in the program, which was the blocking up front. I should point out this show today is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I might have had one of those at some point today to make it all the way through this game and a couple post-game shows. Today we got a couple comments as well. Alfred Matthews, a longtime listener, good guy, is not so high on Donovan Smith, and I'll leave it that. And then he also says one of the worst performances he's ever seen, and that's saying something. I will say that was one of the harder watches of Houston Cougar football I've ever watched. And Donovan made plenty of mistakes, like the pick six he should have just thrown in the dirt, right? Like those kinds of things I think make a lot of sense. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit holes like, well, the guy's trying to make a play, and yeah, sure, right? At the end of the day, that ball should have gone in the dirt, should never been thrown. I will say, and the reason I want to start the first segment being about the blocking, it felt like, honestly, that was truly as bad of blocking as I've ever seen at any level of college football, at least compared relative to the opponent. And I think that it's important to stress that like that throws off everything. You're keeping in tight ends and running backs to block. You've got less people out in the pattern to run routes. Well, that means it's more cover guy. They weren't blitzing. They were only sending 4 down linemen, the occasional dog linebacker. You've got 5 offensive linemen blocking. That's abysmal. It's abysmal. And I think the unfortunate thing is that like the frustrating thing is I knew it wasn't going to be as good as it was in like 2015, 16. We're not quite there. I did not think it would be this bad. I've talked about the tackles being weak spots since the spring game. It stuck out to me in the spring game as being weak spots. But again, I did not think it looked like this. It just throws everything off. And then you got, people are human beings, so the tight ends are helping out on blocking, getting frustrated. They can get the ball in the passing because they got to help out with blocking and stuff like that. And then frankly, we have a couple tight ends that are really good at a lot of things. I would argue after watching tonight that they're not great pass blockers. I think, they can do a little bit more in the run game, maybe. But that wasn't necessarily their problem either. I go on and on about this, I guess. I do want to, point out that OLA did come in, and I don't want to act like it didn't happen. Came into the game for the last drive. It looks like Zion Chris might have gotten dinged up in his drive, which led to OLA getting the call as the third string quarterback on the depth chart for that final drive, who drove down the field for a 74-yard drive and did score a touchdown on a little back shoulder-ish kind of fade to Joseph Manjack. Manjack got in the end zone. Good for him individually. Also, I think it's good to just not be shut out in the home opener. And I think that, I could go on and on about like why that happened on the final drive of the game with OLA and not Donovan Smith. I would point out that it looked like a lot of UNLV subs were in the game as well. I go round and round with this because I feel like when I talk about the offensive line as the problem, and I think definitively the reason they only scored 7 points on Saturday night was because the offensive line. It was that kind of bad. Big plays called back on holding penalties, no push on run plays, sacks on sacks on sacks. I mean, Donovan Smith, a running quarterback, had like negative bajillion. I think it was actually negative 24 yards, something like that, right? Like that's bad. He also got like intentional grounding penalties trying to avoid sacks. I mean, these were bad plays, right? What I think I don't want to delineate too is like people typically hear them think I'm giving someone a pass. The two easiest people to blame a loss on are the coach and the quarterback, and we fired last year's coach, right? And so I think that it's natural that Dom's going to catch a lot of the flack on that this year. I do think he played okay in spots. Gasp! I think the deal is that to play with that offensive line, he kind of needed to be perfect, and he only had 1 or 2 plays I would call perfect, much less a drive or a quarter or anything, right? First game, offensive for new offense, and he also didn't play in the spring, didn't get physical reps in spring, right? That was a bad first game. We have Patty pointing out that U of H and Rice both had horrible opening games. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe we need to check the water. I don't know. David Comer said, did I pronounce it right? David Comer said that offensive line was bad. Manyagavi isn't coordinating a fart. Or maybe he's only coordinating a fart. Maybe should that be the thing? I don't know. Discussion here about if we're a basketball school or not between a couple people. Brian Lloyd said the Grinch from Vegas came and stole Fritzmas, which was clever. That probably should have been the title of the episode. Good work, Brian. So I would say that, UNLV, and I don't mean to say that, well, I think these are UNLV folks. Maybe they're not talking about welcoming themselves to Locked On Coogs. I feel like we also should take into account here that UNLV isn't the typical FCS scrub. This isn't, I don't know, Southeast West Junior Community College. I mean, they're hoping to get to the college football playoff. And I said it this week, and I had some comments like, what are you talking about? But in the 12-team playoff, a group of 5 team is guaranteed a spot. UNLV thinks they absolutely can be the highest ranked group of 5 team and claim that spot. They were in the NWC championship game last year. Boise beat them in that, and Boise would have been it a year ago, right? And so I think that's the thought, right? It's Comer like Homer. Oh, my bad. David Comer. Gotcha. So I think across the board, again, I was predicting Houston wins 35-28, right? And so 27 points with one of those touchdowns being defensive, I felt like I had a pretty good read on what Houston's defense was going to do in this game against the go-go offense. If anything, I actually thought they'd give up more touchdowns on truly defense versus offense. The deal here is that offensive line was that surprisingly far behind in the rebuild, I'll say. And that's not to say offensive line's a funny part. It's, people forget that you get 11 players on the field, 5 of them are offensive linemen. That's half your offense, more or less, is the offensive line, right? And you can have a play where a center plays really well, where a right guard does really its job really well, and it doesn't matter because the other 4 don't. Or the inverse can happen when we have 4 people do very well, but one guy doesn't. That gets up a sack, right? Those kinds of things make for a hard job as offensive lineman. I don't mean to make this easy, but they just weren't up to stuff. They plainly played as bad as I've ever seen a college offensive line play in a football game. It just wasn't good. And John points out here that people on Facebook mentioned that Cougars have 60 new players. They have 63 new players between freshmen and transfers. That's the second highest in FBS football behind Colorado. And I think that did play a role in the night as well. A lot of guys, you mentioned guys new to the coaching staff, right? But offensive line has to gel together some. These guys haven't played a whole lot of game-like snaps together across the board, but they just didn't get the job done. And I joked with Michael on Locked On Houston Sports, the Cougs postcast show. Is there an offense that you can realistically run that just doesn't have to block people? And we both jokingly said, the Bill Yeoman veer. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do if you can't block anyone. You can't run. You have trouble passing. The couple of good passes they had, Donovan Smith was on the roll moving, and I think that's something they got to do. You saw Russell Wilson did a lot in Seattle when they were good. the deal is that really limits your route tree, because as you're rolling to the right or left, you're kind of cutting off the other side of the football field, right? And so only so many routes can get run in that. It's a really, really not a great solution. Now, I want to talk about the defense because I want to stop feeling crappy about the way the team played. I think the defense played all right. But first, if you're looking to feel all right about yourself or about your diet or what have you, Factor Meals is a place to get it done. You can fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious and great tasting meals. I know myself, I got a 14-month-old still working through this dad bod thing to shake that. We're a Factor family as well. They got 35 different meals and more than 60 different add-ons to choose from. You can crush all your wellness goals with dietitian approved meals and ingredients that you can add and trust as you go. Keep the kitchen time to a minimum. Again, 2 minutes is all it takes. Enjoy effortless support for your lifestyle, whether that's calories, maximizing protein intake, avoiding meat, or just for any better balanced meals. They got all those things. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off the next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 for factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off the next month while your subscription lasts. All right, now Houston is eventually going to try and turn this thing into a championship caliber team, even if it's not in Fritz's year one. Passion, drive, and patience, the thing you're going to need, and patience might be key. The formula for winning championship is that simple. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof kits, exhaust kits, LED headlights, all the things you need for your car, whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. The 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because the eBay Motors are burning rubber and not cash. Well, the parts you need, the price you want, it's easy to make car the MVP and bring home that huge win. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's only exclusive by eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Back here on the Cougs postcast, and I want to talk about the defense because I want to feel better about myself and the game. So I want to point out, I guess, that if we're doing player of the game kind of stuff, Houston had a couple of players of the game in a big way. I think AJ Haulcy showed up and showed out, and I commented on Twitter. I still call it Twitter, sorry, that I think he looked like an all Big 12 caliber safety. I really do. Big pick with a 50-yard return in the end zone. He had a couple big hits as well. I think he totaled 5 tackles and a couple pass breakups. I think that you got to give him a nod for, like, yes, did Houston give up 27 points? Yes. Did Houston give up 20 points to that offense for the first time that quarterbacks played in the FBS? Yes, although I would point out he was like multi-time conference player of the year in the FCS and at Holy Cross's conference or whatever like that. Side note, I saw someone commenting this week, I think it was Barstow guy, about going from Holy Cross to Las Vegas. Gigantic culture jump. And now he's looking a little looser. Imagine that. No, I think that the defense keeping them to 20, at least 20 points their offense scored, is commendable. This team's going to score 40 points on more teams on their schedule than not. They might score 50 on more teams on the schedule than not. And Houston's defense held them to 20. Now, I know that they're a group of 5 school, but that, again, if they'd won this game 40-20, we wouldn't be thinking that badly about giving up 20. The deal is that they didn't, and so the defense is on the field a lot. Michael brought up in the postcast for Locked On Houston Sports, I thought it was clever. He mentioned, yes, they played good defense, but couldn't get off the field. And I think that's probably the only criticism I have of the defense is there are several third downs where it's like 3rd and 3 and they give a 4-yard run. It's like you got to find ways to keep that guy short at some point. I saw a handful of comments here. Houston Cougars in Germany. A frequent listener says, stay proud, stay confident, stay true. I appreciate the optimism. On the inverse, Scott Aikens says, I see no fire to see and get a win in Donovan Smith. I don't know if I'd go that far about fire. I think it died at some point in the game because everyone was frustrated. But Houston Cougars Jeremy said very difficult to win games and attract talent when the stadium is empty, and also agrees with Scott. So there goes some of that optimism. No, I think that the crowd attendance got called out by several people. There's a Houston thing. Houston supports winners. You got to win to get people to come. That's the way things go in Houston. A lot of stuff to do. Why would you go? I mean, the Astros play at the exact same time on the other side. I mean, not the other side, downtown, right? So you got to find a way to get people to come to you as opposed to them. And the best way to do that's by winning. I firmly believe in that. The truth is that they had, I think, 25,000 people announced, and then again to be a blowout, and people left. I think the pick six I saw, I think it was Andy Yanez, and if I'm misquoting that tweet, I'm sorry, Andy, or whoever it was. I think Andy Yanez said that most people left the stadium after the pick six, and that was a kind of the nail in the coffin moment. I certainly was still optimistic. It was 14-0 at halftime, and Houston came out and got the ball, start the half, and I was like, okay, refresh, restart, down 14, ain't no thing. And they moved backwards the next three offensive plays. And so I just don't know if I don't know. I don't know if I can blame people for not coming to watch that. Right now, I talk to you all about the Cougs every day, so that's why I watched that. But I get why people wouldn't. Richard pointed out that LA did put a good drive together. We did put a good drive together. I've been trying to stress there were a lot of twos on the field for that. Not to discredit him playing well. I'm glad somebody played well. But I think there's people already calling for massive changes and things like that. I wasn't quite that ship last year when he came in and did the same thing against Sam Houston State. Who knows? As far as the defense goes, trying to be positive. You'll get me off track. Trying to be positive. Talking about the defense. The other guy I talk about as far as player of the game goes, I mentioned AJ Haulcy. I'd also bring up Keith Cooper. I guess Keith got cramps at one point, but as a defensive lineman, that frankly was fairly easy to run away from. He had a sack and 3 tackles. I thought he was involved in a lot of different run fit and stuff like that. Some pressure on the quarterback. Defense held Sluka to just 6 completions in the pass game, and I thought that I thought this go-go offense had a little bit more to its pass game. Not that it's a pass heavy, but 6 of 13, I would have thought they'd throw the ball a little bit more. I guess when you're up by that much second half, you don't quite have to. But I really thought that he'd probably have a little bit better passing numbers. Defensive secondary did a very good job. The trick is that it's back to those lines of scrimmage. Houston's defensive line looked gassed at times. And the concerning part there, as John here points out, the Big 12 is tougher than the AAC. That was not a Big 12 team, but I think that's probably fair. Is that, honestly, that's if your defense line is going to look gassed there, what's it going to look like against Oklahoma next week, against Arizona, against, I don't know, Colorado, whomever, right? Colorado's not very good, but, people commenting with the Fritz era and stuff like that. I don't think that this is the indictment on the Fritz era that people say it is. Again, we've known for a while this is going to be a 3-year rebuild minimum to get things going the right way. I don't know that we realized we were for this far behind the 8 ball. I certainly didn't think that it'd be like this kind of game to start the Fritz era. But I like I said, I think anyone who listened to me talk all week that I'd predicted a win. I didn't think they'd look great, but I thought they could still win that game. But I don't think anyone thinks that this is the kind of team that's going to go to like a college football playoff or anything like that. This year. The goal is to be really good in 3 years, right? This is a 3-year rebuild, 3-year rebuild, 3-year rebuild. Things don't get easier with Oklahoma next week. Oklahoma is not a Big 12 game. It's a non-conference Power 4 game. Big 12 requires you to play one of those every year, and ours is Oklahoma next week. In the meantime, there's a lot of stuff going on in the Big 12. And I'm kind of looking at the Big 12 roundup and kind of see and talk about how the rest of the conference looks. And I'll probably still continue to talk about this a little bit. We'll talk about this one on today and then on Monday's show and maybe a little bit on Tuesdays as well at some point. But first, before we get too far down that road, if you need a little bit more energy after a deflating loss like that, or you're just hitting that wall after lunch. Again, I am a teacher, I am a coach, I'm a podcaster. I don't get a whole lot of sleep. I've got a 14-month-old on the baby monitor right now. I don't get a whole lot of sleep, right? But 5 Energy helps me push through that wall, whether it's after lunch or whenever it is, to make sure I get on and have the energy to do everything I need to do in the day with zero sugar, convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for just getting stuff done. If you go to 5energy.com, the number 5, ourenergy.com, you get some 5 Energy product today and use code locked on CFB in all caps. You get 20% off your order. The offer is only valid through September 30th, so get on it today. Only valid on one order. You can't use it on other promotions or the subscriptions and stuff like that. But you go to 5energy.com, code locked on CFB. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, now around the Big 12, first of all, I should point out, it's weird how late Big 12 games now go. I've got Arizona State and Wyoming on one screen. I've got New Mexico and Arizona on the other. New Mexico and Arizona are in a tie ball game at the end of the first quarter, 14-14. Crazy going on over there, whatever's going on over there. But the Big 12 was kind of a roller coaster due in no minimal part to the Houston loss as well. I think what's interesting, though, so Houston loses bad to UNLV. It's not great. 27-7, not how you want to start the year, not how you want to start the Fritz era. But there were a lot of other interesting things across the league. West Virginia got beat bad at home, 34-12 in I forget their name is called, the rivalry game they have with Penn State. Texas Tech, after losing last year's opener, barely beats Abilene Christian, 51-52 in overtime. Barely beats Abilene Christian. Texas Tech does. Oklahoma State, South Dakota State, 44-20. That's not bad, I guess. Cincinnati, 38, Towson, 20. That's not bad, I guess. Iowa State, 21. North Dakota, 3. Right. Colorado, 31. North Dakota State, 26. TCU 34, Stanford 27. Like, some of these games got to be close. And I feel like, that's encouraging. We can compete with some of those teams, right? Baylor 45-3 over Tarleton State. I still think that tells us a lot more about Tarleton State than it is about Baylor. Kansas beat Lindenwood 48-3. Okay, but it's Lindenwood. Utah beat Southern Utah 49-0. Okay, but it's Southern Utah. Those aren't even Group of 5 schools, right? Those are tiny. Tarleton State, tiny, right? Kansas State beat UT Martin 41-6. Again, tiny. Interestingly, while Arizona State Wyoming is currently happening, Arizona State is up big, and Arizona and New Mexico seem like they're in something tight. This does feel like the kind of conference that is as wide open as we thought it was going to be. And I think that's what makes this frustrating. That's what makes this spot frustrating, is at a time when the Big 12 is kind of up for the taking. Like, back up. The 2016 Houston Cougars, 2015 Houston Cougars would win the Big 12 this year. Full stop. They would. I would dare to say that the 2021 Houston Cougars would have a shot, right? And instead, we've had to do this rebuild thing a few times, and we're sitting here thinking, oh, man, we're at 27-7 with UNLV. Now, friendly enemy says it seems like it's to be every Saturday, shaking their head. Arkansas doing at least what's expected. Richard Rigsby is down on Smith. Says he lost confidence in the line already and won't last the season as the starter. I had an interesting conversation, may bear mentioning throughout the year this year. We'll see how it goes with, again, Michael Connor over at Locked On Houston Sports, City of Houston Sports. And the conversation kind of was around, like, at what point do you think, if we're building for the future, do we need to have a younger quarterback in there? Interesting thought. I don't know that I agree with this necessarily. This is, we can't win with number one. Last year's comments, something, I don't know, Uwe needs to start. I think it's a whole different task to be the third string quarterback. And I think we need to make sure that while Uwe played well in his one drive, like he played well in his drive against Sam Houston State, we also saw him come in the game against Central Florida last year and, like, kind of crap his pants a little bit, right? Like, I think it's easy to see games where you play against second and third teamers and play well and think like, oh man, he can do the deal. When truthfully, like, I think he's got a lot of growing to do still. He is young. I don't mean to say he'll never be any good or anything like that. That would be far too damning for me to say about any young player. But he's really young. I think that's the way this goes. I think the truth is you're saying like at some point tonight, Donovan got gun shy. And I think it happened well before his pick six, where he was just like, what is happening? I've got no time. I've got nowhere to go with the ball. The pick six felt very much like he's thinking, okay, I've got to find something to make out of this. I got to find somewhere to go with this. What can I do? Right. And so instead of throwing the ball in the dirt like you're supposed to when they sniff out the screen pass or the swing pass, he tried to loft it over a la Patrick Mahomes. No, you'll know this. He's not Patrick Mahomes, right? There were moments he took sacks where he's running around and I don't think his eyes are quite downfield anymore because he's got the pressure and just has to get out of it. And that's a very natural thing. I think the deal is like the step we expected or step we hoped to see Donovan make was to do that less. The trick is that the offensive line got worse. And so doing that less with a worse offensive line, I mean, that might look like what tonight looked like, right? I don't know. I got comments on helmets now. Jay doesn't like the helmets. I kind of like the script, Houston, on the helmets. I don't know. Made UNLV look like a top 12 college football playoff contender. We talked about that earlier. They actually might be. So there you go. Vanderbilt gave UNLV a harder time last season. Vanderbilt also beat Virginia Tech today. So I don't know. Maybe Vanderbilt's not what they used to be. I don't know. What do I know? No, I look at, okay, if I'm going to try and be positive, the offensive line bluntly has to be better. I mean, for anything to get going on this team, the offensive line has to be better. This is just not true. No one scoring 20 points that offensive line played. Houston Sky says that at guarantee if LA starts, we scored 20 points. That's just not true. No one was scoring 20. Patrick Mahomes, that offensive line, was not going to score 20 points. He just wasn't, right? Again, digressing a little bit, but that has to get better. As that gels, as they break down film, as they get better with the season goes, I don't think that it's crazy to think this team takes a big leap once that group takes a small leap, right? Because that will fix a lot of problems, right? You'll have suddenly, you'll have a little bit more time to throw. You want to keep the tight ends to block. You get the running backs out in swing patterns. That'll open up other guys because the defenders have to go cover other players. They're not just three guys in a pass pattern. When you have to max protect, that means, especially when you have to max protect and they're only sending 5, that means they've got 6 dudes to cover your 3. That math don't math. I teach history, but that math don't math, right? And so I feel like, right, as those things open up, it will be better. As the pass game opens up, you'll get guys out of the box. You can run the ball better. Those things can all be complementary and play well together, right? But it all starts with being able to block 5-on-4. Therefore, down linemen, if they send a dog, a 5th guy, got to be able to block them with your 5 guys, right? I'd love if that happened between now and Saturday against Oklahoma. I really would. I gotta see improvement at a couple of those spots. I said throughout the episode though, so I don't mean to keep dogging them, but they just gotta be better. And Dom needs to be better too. Man, Jack dropped a catch. He needs to catch. I thought a couple different times the receivers bobbled balls didn't need to be bobbling. There were 1 or 2 times I can think of where, I guess 1 or 2 times for Parker and 1 or 2 times for Rashawn when they were back there. I thought they kind of cut into traffic, meaning that they are reading the zone and jump into a gap that there were UNLV guys in. I think a lot of people have to be better. But again, I think this team makes a gigantic, big leap once that position group, the offensive line, makes a small leap. I just hope it happens soon. We'll be breaking down the game more. Probably watch it again at some point Sunday afternoon, evening, and then give another little bit more detailed breakdown Monday-ish. Labor Day Monday can throw things off. and then we'll try and flush it by Tuesday, move on to the next one. Recruiting news, as always, throughout the week as well. Houston basketball had a big-time recruit, a big-time big man recruit on campus this weekend. So if news happens there, obviously we got to break that down as well. Lots happening in and around the Third Ward here at Locked On Coogs. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell so you know live. Locked On Coogs is proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day, even the hard ones. You lose 27-7. Go Cougs.